ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And today we are going to begin our news with more from Southeast Asia and also all over the world by Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery. Before we start, I just want to say that this morning we do have a bit of existential crisis between us because we were talking about the question of suicide rate and also the question of death. It's not something that not everyone can easily cope with it, but it's also a question for people to accept that death is part of human lives and human cycle.
It is, but of course the scary part is that you never know when is it going to happen. It could be today, it could be tomorrow. And
it could be someone that you are close with, someone that you knew. It could be someone that you know quite some time ago, and then out of a sudden the person just gone.
So let me ask the ultimate question of existentialism. What's the point of anything? Why are we doing all this when we're all just going to die anyway?
Because I think if you read the book by Albert Camus, a French Algerian writer, prolific writer and also philosopher, he has this book called The Myth of Sisyphus, if I'm not mistaken. Sisyphus. And I mean, the idea is what's the point of living if you are going to do the same shit over and over again? It's okay, right? I see the word.
That's fine.
But at the same time, you find meaning in doing all the mundane routine stuff, because the idea of meaning is supposed to be to strive for lives and to do the best that you can do in whatever lives that you challenges that you are facing right now.
Absolutely. So the best that we can do is make the best out of all the opportunities we have that's given to us, and whatever it is that we're doing right now, just go all out, because there's nothing else that you can really do.
There's nothing. I mean, human lives is actually meaningless. That's the reality, the baseline. Whether there's God or no God, in the end, we always will feel alone. So to make sense of why, we exist at all is to create meaning, and creating meaning by doing it over and over again. It can be like really mundane stuff like washing dishes every day, for example. But at least you're doing it for the future of yourself, or for the life that you assume that you are going to have.
And let's move on to our news before all our listeners go and kill themselves or something, because they're so depressed.
Well, the reason why I talk about fear, death, and also the idea that we are going to die one day. So why the heck, striving all this shit in lives? But then at the same time, if we are clouded by fear, that means we are not able to move forward, and our lives will always be miserable. And I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the unfounded fear in the ASEAN community. So this is a story by the Star, and what is being said is AEC, or ASEAN Economic Community, needs to explain more to their stakeholders, as the deadline to form the ASEAN Economic Community is approaching, but nothing much has been shared, and this has created a lot of unfounded fears.
And this AEC is of course scheduled to be launched the end of next year, with the aim of grouping ASEAN countries into a single market and production base. And consumers will have access to a cheaper and wider range of goods and services, and enjoy an even more extensive consumer protection. So we are going for a single market, a single base of production kind of economic community.
So from existentialism to market economy, that's a very fast jump, very huge leap that we are taking forward. But this is what has been spoken by or expressed by Minister Datuk Sri Mustafa Mohamad when he was being faced with a lot of questions during the event itself. And what he himself has insisted is arranging the meeting with civil society and also with a lot of different stakeholders. They are really concerned about the formation of ASEAN economy integration and the post-ASEAN economic community 2015, which is of course to be scheduled to be launched to be scheduled and launched next year, with the aim of grouping ASEAN countries together so that we can have, instead of just 26 million consumer, we can have a 1 billion consumer population as an ASEAN economic community.
And also, according to Mustafa, one of the fears that Malaysians are facing is that it will be tough for them to get jobs when it comes to AEC, because they are afraid that the mutual recognition arrangement will only be limited to certain sectors. But that, of course, goes back to our country and also our Prime Minister to look at the bigger picture, how he is going to make sure that all our unemployed graduates or even future graduates will be equipped with all the right skills for whatever sector.
The
that
first
is
fear
necessary.
is about, are we able to handle this? Because by opening up all these markets, meaning that you're opening up for competition, and also that means our graduates or the workforce that we have now have to up their level to the level that is on par with international standards.
Actually, yesterday we attended a talk on the post-budget, and one of the speakers raised a very interesting point where he said, when it comes to your employment skills, what are the skills you have as a graduate? The mistake that we're doing now is that we're focusing on after university, which is too late, according
And
to
he's
him.
saying
And
that you have to
right.
start really young.
You start at primary school. You give the child communication skills at primary school itself. You don't wait until they leave college. By then it's too late because they've already been conditioned, been brainwashed by the system.
And one of the area that he felt really strongly, it's not just about language, but it's also about being critical in terms of thinking, in terms of action. A lot of the Malaysian graduates, they have this spoon-feeding attitude.
Mm-hmm.
They felt that, he felt that Malaysian graduates, they tend to be very at ease. They tend to feel that they are entitled to the jobs or to whatever salary. But to him, you have to be very competitive in order for you to achieve ahead. It's not just about you. If probably 10 million, or if 10,000 graduates every year think like that, that means the whole economy of Malaysia will not be as competitive as the government would want it to be.
But then again, Mustafa is only actually handling one economic pillar, which is one of the three pillars that ASEAN community will be having. And also going back to what we were discussing earlier, what Malaysia is lacking right now is a lot of accountants and surprisingly engineers. We thought there were a lot of engineers in the country.
There are a lot of traditional graduates with traditional qualification, but are they on par? That's another question.
So what the MRA is inclusive of now is engineering services, architecture, accountancy, nursing, surveying, and medical and dental practitioners.
Another area that a lot of people have a lot of fear, are we able to achieve this ASEAN economic community, is the issue of human rights. As you all know, a lot of NGO has voiced out their concern on a lot of human rights cases, in particularly the issue of the Rohingya. I mean, Myanmar is opening up, but a lot of people, when they talk about the economy of Myanmar moving forward towards a more democratic economy, liberalized economy, but they fail to see that the Myanmar or the Rohingya people are still very much persecuted in their own country. Some even mention it's similar to genocide.
Right, and our Prime Minister Najib will be making a trip to Myanmar for the ASEAN summit next month, and then we will officially be the ASEAN chair, and Malaysians should definitely be more aware of what ASEAN is about, what AEC is about, because there's no point that we keep talking about AEC and all this ASEAN integration when people are not really aware about what this can really do for us and how we can benefit from this in the first place.
Another something that we might not be aware in Malaysia, but it's happening in Indonesia. Did you know? And this is a statement. This is not a question to you. Did you know someone who is like really rich visited Indonesia?
Of course I know.
So
And he is somebody that everyone knows or should know, because if you don't know, then shame on you, because
then
everyone is
don't
on
use Facebook. Don't use Facebook at all, because Mark Zuckerberg just flew in to Indonesia and met a few people, including the president-elect Jokowi. There were many interaction. Mark Zuckerberg see that Indonesia is, especially Jakarta, is a place where he see the potential of his social network. And if I'm not mistaken, Indonesia is one of the biggest user of Facebook and also Instagram, and he sees that by expanding the discourse on social network with the president-elect Jokowi, he can see the potential of the country's economy growing at a much higher rate than what we used to have with the President Bambang.
With 250 million people in the country, they are actually in the top 5 global users of social media. And they are, of course, widely on Facebook. And I know you're not on Twitter, but if you notice, whenever there is a trending topic, which means the whole world is talking about it, it's really just Indonesians talking about it. But
I'm
their
not from
population,
the 1950s, I know.
But because their population is so huge, when they start talking about something, it becomes a worldwide topic. It's a trending topic because of the amount of people in the country. So it's definitely, it makes sense for Mark Zuckerberg to visit them and to use Indonesia as his base for expansion.
And it's also a win-win situation. This is what he said. He said that he's also pushing for small businesses, in this case SME. If you go to Indonesia, you will see a lot of entrepreneurs. And these are your makcik, selling bakso to you, and your pakcik selling, your pak, selling you all this, like for example, sate kambing and all that. Is really vibrant, when you talk about small businesses in Indonesia. Even Jokowi brought him to one of the local markets in Indonesia and share with him all these Indonesian products that needs to be marketed to the world. And he said that, why don't you use Facebook to do that? Because we have a platform, we have a lot of users, and majority of the users are Indonesia. And why don't we push using Facebook to push microeconomy?
And what he's using to do this is actually to promote internet.org, which is actually a Facebook-led project aimed at boosting internet access around the world. And in his efforts to do this, he also said that this is to transform the economy. And he said there are about 150 million or 200 million people who still don't have access to internet, and unlocking that can actually transform the economy and can help create jobs, and like you mentioned, help small businesses grow.
And what's the irony is, even Jokowi, the reason why he won the election partly was because of social media. And of course, when you talk about social media, you can't escape Facebook, and Facebook has been one of his major reach out towards the younger generation, and definitely Jokowi is very much into Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm actually quite disappointed that he didn't visit Malaysia.
Probably not active enough for him. But since you mentioned Jokowi, just want to add that he will be sworn into his office officially next week. So we'll have to watch out for that one.
That will be very, very interesting for us to watch out. And another area that is very interesting for us to watch out is about Malaysia. Do you know that Malaysia housing or homes in Malaysia is so unaffordable that it's worse than Singapore, Japan, and the US?
So we can actually afford houses in Singapore, Japan, and US.
I want to cry right now. Seriously, I really want to cry. We are the younger generation, and we are given this piece of news where, at some point in the future, we might still be a renter rather than a homeowner.
That's okay, Arlene. We have soup kitchen.
You are being sarcastic.
Of course.
So this US-based urban development researcher, Demographia, they did a research on a lot of properties and also housing market. They realized that how many Malaysians are struggling, to find a house, and the housing market is so expensive that even the government has to create a first attempt, with the BRIM, the One Malaysia Housing Scheme, in order to help first-time home buyers. That is how bad we are right now.
And they actually use the word severely unaffordable for our market prices, and housing even more out of reach, like we mentioned earlier, Singapore, Japan, United States, according to this US-based urban development. But actually, on Twitter recently, our beloved Youth and Sports Minister Gowri tweeted that they came up with a housing plan for about 100,000 people, where it's meant for young couples or people who just recently got a job, where you can actually apply to stay in that house, but not more than 1 year. So they actually give you time to look for a house. But of course, in that case, eventually you still have to go out and buy a house. It's just like a temporary shelter.
You're still a renter in that temporary shelter. Sounds like so kitchen to me now. So what is interesting is Malaysia clocks in at 5.5 I would say times higher than Singapore, which is 5.1 times higher. And if you want to talk about US and Japan, they actually put it as moderately unaffordable, meaning that you need to earn a certain level of income, but it's not like you have to earn more than 10K, for example, in the US or Japan to get a decent house. But in Malaysia, you actually have to earn like really high to be able to stay especially in the urban area. And everyone is working in the area of Klang Valley and also Penang and all these other city hotspots. So you cannot escape, but you have to buy a house that is near to the place you work.
So I forgot the name of the minister who said this, but there was an article that said that our income per capita is actually 5K. And I don't know where that figure came from, because there's no way where our per capita is 5K. Even 2005 is not yet like a standard for us. It's not even our minimum. So the 5K figure is just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And in order to afford a house, you probably need to have a more stable income first, like what you were just mentioning.
In fact, to own a decent house, and I'm not talking about $1 million houses, but just a decent house, you need to earn a combined income of more than 10K. That is how freaking expensive housing in Malaysia is. And it was actually raised during the post-budget discussion that we attended. And although we didn't get a really clear answer by the speakers, but one thing I realized that the government is still struggling, even though they have promised a lot of housing scheme that they are bringing. The government is still struggling to moderately, pull down the housing prices, because it's going at a ridiculously high price.
But then again, most of the efforts are usually centered around KL, but Malaysia is Malaysia. Malaysia is not KL. So when it comes to the housing price, but of course, when you go outside KL, the prices will tend to be cheaper, but it's still not that affordable for most people. So they should probably look at this problem as a whole instead of just maybe a KL problem. But of course, the problem is the most severe in here because it's a city and the prices are just going up like a thermometer.
Unless you are a socialist country or communist country, which is what I'm going to share with you now, which is North Korea, which have totally different issue. National Security Advisor Susan Rice said that the US actually is closely monitoring the situation in North Korea. And following a week of rumor regarding the status of Kim Jong-un as the country's leader, apparently they are not sure whether he has stepped down as the North Korean leader or he still it is, because there's virtually no news of him since September 3rd, which is a month ago.
That's right, and he was absent from an event commemorating the anniversary of the founding of North Korea's Workers' Party, and various outlets have speculated his absence to be caused by everything from physical injury to illness to being removed from power.
Or because he's Kim Jong-un. He can do whatever he wants. He'll be like, whatever. I'm going to rest at home for the rest of October with my wife.
But
That's
if
it.
you really think about it, it is pretty unlikely that there was a transfer of power because his family have been running Korea for a very long time, and it's kind of like a legacy thing. And in this case, it's probably pretty unlikely that he's probably ill, or it could be the other two reasons. But there was also another speculation that his little sister Kim Yo-jong is actually running North Korea now in his absence.
Oh, if it's like that, isn't it sweet? Because you have a woman now running North Korea.
That's right. You're always excited when there's a woman in the lead, leading the country.
Definitely.
Or the state.
But one thing that is interesting, I mean, the whole North Korea thing, is how paranoid people are about North Korea. And North Korea is one of the countries that you would never know anything about it other than what rumors that are being told by you, either by the Western media or by the South Korean media. But in reality, nobody really knows about it. Unless you are a Malaysian, you can go there without any visa and just sneak into, the area in Pyongyang and see whether actually Kim Jong-un is still there, or he's injured, or he's just, throwing a tantrum in his home.
But in the case of North Korea, is a power transfer really necessary at this point? If we were to look at it from that perspective, of course, a lot of human rights activists are against how the Kim family or Kim Jong-un himself is
Sounds
running
like king.
the country. Exactly. Well, no, he's not the king, but it's often seen. He's always seen with a smile on his face, and he's just having fun,
And
going for roller coaster rides.
How old is
and-
he? He's like early 30s. Yeah, he is. So can you imagine a very young Mark
Right,
Zuckerberg
right.
age sort of guy running the whole of North Korea?
I mean, of course, we don't want to be biased in terms of age. It doesn't mean that when someone is in his 30s, he's not capable of running the country. But then again, it goes back to who that person is. And does that person actually have all the necessary credentials or qualifications to actually be in charge of a huge amount of people? Because that is really no joke. Because
What is really no joke right now is Thailand is currently run by a group of military guys. But I'm not talking about their military. This time we are discussing about their waterway system, which interestingly, the military regime is really, really interested in expanding Thailand's economy, and they are going to spend $2.5 billion on the waterway system over the next 10 years.
That's right, and they will be focusing on this aspect, and they will be building infrastructures, including ports, bridges, and canals. And among major projects are the development of the Pak Bara seaport in the southern province of Satun, and a rail link from that port to a port in the Songkhla province, according to the minister. And for this, of course, they have approved 2.4 billion in dollars.
In
Right.
dollars. And
If you were to convert it to baht, it will be 2.4 trillion baht.
it is. I cannot imagine how trillion will look like, how many zeros it would be involved. But it is said that it would go ahead with the $1.9 billion expansion at Bangkok's main Suvarnabhumi airport, as well as plans to build another 3 provincial airports. So you see, even though they are under the military, but the military seems to be very much economically in tune. They are focusing more on expansion, economic development, and they definitely are trying to prove to their people that, hey, just because we are a bunch of guys who used to hold weaponaries and go into warfare and all that, doesn't mean that we don't know anything about dollars and cents.
And of course, they, instead of proving it to the people outside, the most important thing is they have to prove it to their own people, because it seems like their own people still do not have confidence in them. And yeah, by doing all this, they're probably trying to keep up with the ASEAN integration, the AEC. So good
There's a
luck
lot
to
of pressure.
Thailand.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure there, especially being the second largest economy in Southeast Asia. But at the end of the day, I think one of the main issue that a lot of people are still not talking about, whether it's AEC, Thailand, North Korea, or whatever it is the issue of human rights. And that's definitely these areas are what the governments should be tackling in the next decades. That's all from us today. This is Arlene, and of course you can always follow us on Twitter and Facebook and share your comments.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're on the move, you don't have your computer with you, just download our TuneIn app on your smartphone and look for Durian ASEAN.